Hello and welcome. In this video, we shall be seeing control statements which help us structure the program and structure the control flow of the program appropriately. Let's get started. The first thing which comes is the if else structure which we have. So if in case we have to check some condition, then we can use a if conditional structure. So as an example, if x is greater than 5, I want to print this, and in this case, because x is greater than 5, it shall be printed. If else is another structure which we can use, and if else has a else condition as well. So if the condition is met, this shall be executed. If it is not met, the other one shall be executed. Also, we have if and then else statement, where we can have multiple conditionals and the list can go to infinite. I mean, there could be more structure else if present inside this. So if z is greater than 0, print this. Else if z is less than 0, you can have this. You can have another statement also, if less than -5. You can have more conditions here in else if. And finally, else if it does not meet any of those conditions, it comes to the else and this gets printed. So I have opened the Google Colab, and now I would quickly say, so this is how we have to write it. We have to write the if statement, then the condition. This condition means x is greater than 6, then this colon. And then we have to do whatever we need to do if in case this is met. Okay, so important thing to understand here is indentation. I would show a slide also on that, but indentation means the formatting. So we should have a appropriate format which the Python would be able to understand. So we are able to see that this statement is inside the if because it is under the if, and there are some spaces in between from here till here, and that's where it gets printed. In case, let's say in case I don't follow the indentation properly and I mix the indentation, it is giving me an error because it is not indented. So I can put some spaces here and then I can get it running. Another thing is, if there is a second statement, it should follow the, let's say I have to print the type x. Okay, so I want to print this also. So now it shall print, but if in case I miss the indentation here, again the same problem can come, shall come. Only way to solve this problem is by removing this and placing it here. So this means that it is not part of a if, which means if, let's say if I execute, it will definitely be executed. Let's do that. Now let's say x, I make it 5. Now it shall not print the first statement, but it will still print the second statement. So it is still printing because it's not part of if. If I indent it properly, then nothing shall be printed. If I make it 15, then both of them shall be printed. So important point, indentation is very important in Python, and you have to format your code appropriately. So I'll take the same example and put a if else here. So this is what happens now. If I make it 5, it would go in the else statement. And the same thing else if, we have already described it some time back, but let's put else if now. Okay, so this is what I have written now. So if we execute now, again I did the same mistake. Let me place the colon. X is greater than 3 because it is this one. It is not greater than 6. It is greater than 3 though. So it printed this. If I put a 2, it will print x is greater than 1. And if I put a 0 here, it will not be able to fit into any of these if conditions, and it will go to the else, and then it will print nothing matched. So this is the indentation or formatting style which I was discussing just a minute back. So indentation level, all statements within a block must be at the same level of indentation. Okay, so if there is a block which you have written, every statement should be at the same level. The standard recommendation is to have 4 spaces for each level of indentation. Okay, and consistency is very important. You cannot mix spaces and tabs. So you have to use tab or a space. That is what is recommended to avoid any syntax errors. Now we would see loops. We have two kind of loops, for and the while loop. So let's see for. So what is happening here is I created a list called fruits, and then what I do is for all the fruit. So I iterate through all the fruit which are there in the fruits, and I print each of those fruit. Okay, so that's what is a for loop, wherein you loop through a list of items and get some activity done on those list of items. So while loop, so this is another loop. So while meaning you have to have a condition till the condition is true, that specific section shall be executed. So while this is true, meaning while count is less than 5, these statements would be executed. That is a while loop. And now if I execute, I shall be able to see all these fruits being printed one by one. This we had not seen earlier, but this is a way to iterate through the items inside a list. So remember the syntax. What is happening here is that it goes through all the elements of the fruits. So one by one, I can call it X, Y, Z, any name I can give it. The name is not important. Now what would happen is in the X, one by one, all the elements of this fruits would come and they would be printed. So how many elements are there? 3 elements are there. So this would be printed 3 times. Okay, and you can verify that also. So let's say you say I equal to 0, and you can say print I, and you can say I equal to I plus 1. So now I would be seeing that let me start with the index 0, then 0, 1, 2 would be the things which shall be printed. So first 0, and to make it more obvious, I can do a separator here. So it printed 0 apple, so index 0 apple. Second time the loop ran and we saw banana, and the third time we saw orange. So this is what is the loop structure. And please remember one more thing, that a print statement can be written in a different way also. So for example, you can write a formatted print. So which means that I could have written values are, and I can say X fruit, and so now it's a formatted text, which means that it will print these strings as is, but the moment it sees a curly brace, it would understand that there is a variable which is there and it has to fetch the value of the variable. So if I run it now, you can see that it is printing value are apple fruit. This looks little weird, so let me call it like this. So it will say apple fruit and first loop, second loop, third loop. So that's the formatted print for you. So now what we are seeing is that we have a variable called count. The value is initialized to 0, and I'm saying while count is less than 5, print count. Now what is the statement? This statement is the same statement. Let me put a comment. Count equal to count plus 1. It can be written like count plus equal to 1, and this statement would infer this. It's a shortcut of writing the same statement. So if I run it, I see that it ran till 4, because the moment it became 5, it is not no longer less than 5, and thereby this statement became a false and this did not execute. Now there are 3 specific statements which are very important: break, continue, and pass. So break is if in case you want to conditionally break from the loop. So the initial condition is still met, but because of some reason you want to break from the loop. So this is what you can do. If x equal to 5, this is equal to means it's a comparison equal, and if in case it's a single equal, that is a assignment equal. Double it equal is a check. It's a boolean check whether x is equal to 5 or not. So the moment x will become 5, the loop shall break. Continue. So continue means that the specific iteration of that loop, the specific step of the loop would not be executed, which means when x is equal to 5, it will just continue. It will just go back to the looping structure with the next element now, and it will not execute the print statement. So it just continues to the next step. That is the meaning of continue. The third thing which we were discussing was the pass, which basically means that you don't want to define what this loop is going to do right now. It's useless, but it is probably, if in case you are putting a loop but you have not defined the structure yet and you want to program it later, you can just write a pass. It is a placeholder for future code. So we had not seen range in the past, but what range is going to do is it would return us a sequence, and the sequence would be from starting from 0 and ending at the specific int value which we have given. So because I have given from, I have not given a start, so it is from 0 till 10. But let's say I give a 5 to 10, then it shall be from 5 to 10. Okay. So and the 10th, the last element, won't be included. So start element is included, which means 5 is included, but the last element is not included. So I have the statement now. So if in case I have to break, let's say that I want to iterate through this, but at the element of 7th, I want to exit from the loop. So what I can do is, so we are utilizing what we had learned earlier, which was a if statement. So this indentation indicates that this break is part of if, but there is no indentation here. This means that it is not part of this if statement. So if this, then it will break, it shall break. So now let's execute. So it shall execute for 5 and 6, but the moment it becomes 7, it will exit from the loop. Now what shall happen? In case of 5, it shall not print the value, because what it is doing is it is stepping over. If x is 5, it is continuing. It is not executing any statement further from this line if in case x is equal to 5. So we can see that 5 is not printed. Okay, and the last thing which we said was a pass. So let's say I have this statement. This will give me an exception because it's an incomplete statement. But if I say pass, so it shall not fail. So this is a placeholder for future code. Now there are exceptions which keep on happening. Exception is any error which happened because of your program. You did something which has caused the exception. So you should be able to catch the exception, otherwise it can lead to the application being closed or the application being crashed. So Python would not be able to execute any further statements, and it won't be a graceful shutdown of the application. So that's where these try catch blocks are important, and this is how we write it. So we know 10 divided by 0 is not a number, and what happens here is the compiler or the interpreter in case of Python is going to throw a exception. So if we don't catch the exception, it will lead to the closure of the program. So that's where we try this specific statement, and if in case the exception happened, only in that case this specific statement would be executed. Otherwise any further statements shall be executed. The other thing is try exception. In case of exception, this should happen, otherwise this should happen. This is the second statement. This is not usually used, so try except is used, and try except finally is the other one which is prominently used. So what is a try except finally? So in this case, if in case the exception happens, it will go here, and it will also go to the finally block. So it is a mandated step. It will definitely go here also. Let's say the exception does not happen, so it shall go here, because the exception, it was 10 divided by 10, there is no exception, so it shall go here. But now in this case, it will not go to this specific statement, but it shall go to the finally block. So that's what finally is, which is executed irrespective of the try statement's output, whether it's a failure or a successful operation in the try block, the finally block executes. So because we did not cater to the exception, it has not printed any high here, because the program did not execute further than this step and it led to an exception. So now we will catch the exception. What I'll do is I'll put a try block here. So now it gave me cannot divide by 0. So I put an exception which is like a superset of all the exceptions. But if in case I have to catch a specific exception, which means I know the exact exception which can happen, then I can put the exact name of the exception also. So now in this case, it shall be printing cannot divide by 0. The other exception it will not print. If in case it was some other exception, it would have printed this one. Okay, typically as a start, you don't worry about these kind of specific exceptions. Wherever you expect exception, you put this block. Now let's extend this with finally. So let me copy this. So what shall happen is you would be seeing that you understood exceptions. Now let's say that it was a proper expression and there was no exception which was thrown. Still, you would be able to see that the finally is executed. Let me do it in a different block. So you see that finally is executed irrespective of whether the exception has happened or not. We have one more control structure by the name comprehensions, which is very important. It helps us to write succinct expressions. So for example, if in case we have to do x to the power 2 for x in range 5, then either I can do it with a loop or I can do directly with this statement. Yeah, one more thing before we go to the dictionary is that you can have a condition also here. So if you see, you have the expression, you have the iteration for which this expression has to be run, and you have a condition for which this expression has to be run. So whenever x percentage 2, which means x percentage 2 means the remainder when you divide x by 2, whenever the remainder is 0, in that case you want to have x to the power of 2. When it is 3, for example, the remainder would be 1. 3 divided by 2, the remainder is 1, so it is not 0. So there is no 9 here. We will see when we execute this. I will just show when we execute this in Colab, we will understand. Similar thing can be written for a dictionary also. So you have the same thing, the key and the value. Key is x and the value is this. We shall see in a bit. And similar conditions can also be put in the case of dictionary. So this is the comprehension which we have written. And what is the value of squares? Let's print that as well. So this is iterated through 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the range, and it has squared. The 0 square is 0, 1 square is 1, 2 square is 4, and that's what we see here. Now you may have a very genuine question, can't we write this with the help of loop? Which means that, so it can be done with the help of, the same thing can be done with the help of this also. But you see here, it is not a list. I'm just printing it. It is not a list. What I can do is I can create a list here like this. So if you see here now, so I get the similar list which I got. But here I had to write many statements more. Same thing is possible with the help of this also, but comprehensions is something which would help you reduce the statements of lines, and it would help you read the statements also very succinctly. So that's where comprehensions are used. Now let's do comprehensions with the help of a conditional. So what is a conditional? Conditional is a condition which I would put here. And like I described earlier, x percentile 2 equal to 0. This means when you divide x by 2, if the remainder is 0, these statements become a true. So now the remainder, so this shall pass. Which ones this shall pass? Remainder 0. It shall pass for 0. It shall not pass for 1, but it shall pass for 2, not pass for 3, but it shall pass for 4. So that's where 0 square is 0, 2 square is 4, and 4 square is 16. Okay. If you have any difficulty in understanding what this means, you can, for example, you can do this. So you understood what is the remainder. So if I say 14 divided by 9, what is the remainder? It is 5. So this is the function which gives you, it's called modulus operator. So we are seeing the key value pairs. Similar 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is the range, and key value pairs are this. And if you want to put the conditional here again, Let me add some code. So then what you have to do, you have to put a if, and let's say x percentage. So only two elements are the ones which follow this, which subscribe to this, and they are printed here. So user input is something which we had missed. Let me quickly describe you what exactly is the user input. And the moment I do this, I would be asked for my city name. Let's say I say NY. This NY is stored in the variable called address, and I can utilize this value. Okay, so if I execute it now, I say NY, and it will say my city is NY. So that's where you can ask the user to give the inputs, and based on that input value you can execute your programs. Let's see the homework exercises now. So these are some simple homework exercises which I have put for you. These are must before you go to the next session. Let's do one of them together. They're very simple. If in case there is anything, you let me know and I'll create a video for that. But let's see one of them. So what does it say? It says, and see now in this case, because the comments are extending beyond one line, either I can put comments like this, or I can do a multi-line comments which we discussed earlier. So now write a program that take input and prints whether it's a number. So I can say number. Now what can I do once I have the number? If, then what I have to do, I have to do a elif, which is else if. Let's execute it. I put a number 5, it's a positive. Okay, one thing to note here is, good that we did this exercise right now. So one thing to note here is that this number is a string. This input, by definition, it returns string. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to convert this string to an integer. So how do we convert it? So what we shall be doing is, so now what I have done here is I have used a function called int, which would get an integer value from this number. Now remember that if in case somebody provides a, instead of providing a int, they provide a string, say that 5. Now definitely it cannot convert 5 into integer. Python cannot convert it into integer. Thereby you shall be getting an exception here. So what you have to do, you have to use the try catch block here, which we have already discussed, try except. So that is what you can do. So what you can do quickly, try. So now if I execute this and I would say again 5, and I am getting invalid literal for int with base 10 5. So which means that this is the exception. So what I have done here is I have captured the exception as a variable e and finally printed also. So it says that this cannot be converted to a base 10 number, and that's where this exception came. So it's a, instead of compiler or the interpreter throwing a error, we are able to get a very valid reason also, rationale also of why the error happened. Okay, so over to the exercises. These are the exercises which you have to do, and once they are done, we shall proceed to the next lesson. And these exercises and the link of these exercises I would be sharing in the description. Thank you.